Hi everyone, welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert K. Sarkos is your usual suspect once again. Now, the big breaking news is the sacking of manager Erik ten Hag from his role as Manchester United manager. According to a statement put out by the club, he will be replaced by his assistant, Ruud Van Nistelrooy, the club legend there, as the interim boss, as the club's technical department focus on searching their next manager. And perhaps we'll look at a few options in some of the names that have been mentioned in that respect. But anyways, the writing was on the wall that anytime soon, Erik ten Hag will be shown the exit. Now, this dates to as far back as the summer when the new management of the club under Ineos, ever since Sir Jim Ratcliffe bought 25% stake in the club, did review his performance from last season that climaxed with a triumph of the FA Cup win there, beating up against Manchester City in the Cup final. But that decision took quite a bit of time, and there were so many questions about Erik ten Hag as manager. The board or the part of that management team went on to interview potential candidates that would have replaced him. Some of the names mentioned in those ranks included Thomas Frank, Enzo Maresca, Ian McKenna there of Ipswich, Mauricio Pochettino, among other names there. They will be mentioned, including Thomas Tuchel, who has since been named the New England international national team boss. So, but anyways, at the end of the day, they concluded that it is worthy to give Erik ten Hag another chance to have a go at this new project that he had been at for 2 years, during which he managed to win the Carabao Cup in his first season and guided the team to a Champions League place finish. So then in his second season, took the team to the Champions League. They didn't perform really well, didn't get past the group stages, but eventually, as bad as it did seem, he concluded it with the triumph of the FA Cup, which again bought him or got him some leverage in terms of his future at the club. Nonetheless, it seemed a painstaking decision that was taken at the time to eventually even renew his contract. It wasn't renewed, but the club exercised the option to extend it for a further year because at the time he had been left with just 12 months. So he extended that, and now, after a run of inconsistent and convincing results, Manchester United have decided to part ways with the Dutch international there as their manager. And according to the statement put on the club website, here is what they had to say. Erik ten Hag has left his role as Manchester United's men's first team manager. Erik ten Hag was appointed in April 2022 and led the club to 2 domestic trophies, winning the Carabao Cup in 2023 and the FA Cup in 2024. We are grateful to Erik for everything he has done during his time with us and wish him well for the future. Ruud Van Nistelrooy will take charge of the team as interim head coach, supported by the current coaching staff. Released a permanent head coach is recruited. Now, whether it's an interim capacity, this is Ruud Van Nistelrooy's final written interview exam. If he passes this, he could potentially get the nod to stay on. We all remember Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I think back in 2018 when he came on after the sacking of Jose Mourinho. He came on as an interim and ended up being awarded, I think, with a 3-year contract then. So this is his test. When Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was handed the contract, was given the interim role then, I remember Manchester United went on a 19-game unbeaten run, I think across all competitions. They were playing electric football. They were the counter-attacking United, very fast-paced team that we had been accustomed to during the era of Sir Alex Ferguson. And I remember one of the former club players in Rio Ferdinand was one of those that did emphasize that just put the contract on the table, let him ink it, and he was a perfect fit for Manchester United. Whereas in the end, he also got sacked, at least for a period of time. He put that club to a fairly good competitive standard that fans did appreciate to a larger extent. Never mind that it eventually did not end well. Now, here we are, the Dutchman has been let go. For those of you that do remember, earlier on in the season, prior to the September international break or during the international break, I did read you the 7 fixtures that would decide Erik ten Hag's future. And then, while he managed to survive that and led himself into the October international break, he has not survived the aftermath of that, because ever since they returned, they've won one game, lost another, and drawn another. That's in the Europa League, where they've played 3 games and all have been draws. In the Premier League, they've not really had the luck. They've also not had the performances. I think for those that sat down to make this decision, they looked around at the pitch. They looked at the amount of money that has been invested in the players that they've been able to bring in. The Manuel Ugarte, Rasmus Højlund, Anthony, Amadou Diallo, Matthias de Ligt, Mazorui, all these players that have been signed, Lisandro Martinez, and yet things are still failing to click. Casemiro, Christian Eriksen, although he did come on as a free agent, and all those kinds of things. They looked at that player composition and they do think that they have a decent squad, or a fairly decent squad. But in terms of being coached, that team has oftentimes not played as a team. They've lacked spirit. They've looked as if they were gambling on a few things here and there. You fail to understand the imprint that Erik ten Hag has put on that team, the kind of identity that he has given them as a Dutch manager. Again, for those of you that recall the history of Manchester United, back in 2016 when Louis van Gaal was sacked after winning the FA Cup, part of the criticism was that his football was a bit dull because there were so many back passes, but at least they knew that he was trying to build a team that was going to dominate possession, that wanted to have the ball as much as it could have it, that was able to play through, passing the ball, dominating play, build it right from the back. Never mind that oftentimes David De Gea fumbled that, like he really struggled. It wasn't his best shoot, and eventually the team knew it. But you could see so many back passes between Chris Smalling, between Phil Jones, and whichever defender played during the time. So there was that criticism, but at least it wasn't out of lack of identity. Again, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, we all knew that he wanted his team to be fast on the counterattacks, try and leverage on those spaces in the wings, and then put balls in the box and score those goals. And indeed, they did score quite a good number of goals. So they had some bit of identity. You may have not liked the identity, but at least it was there. Under Erik ten Hag, you struggled to understand what Manchester United's identity really is. So it's been that kind of a thing. The writing was on the wall for me, in my opinion, that anytime soon he would be, sacked. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his management team have decided to be ruthless in their decision on Manchester United, who by the way returned to action, I think, on Wednesday when they face Leicester City in the Carabao Cup. So that will be the first game that Ruud Van Nistelrooy will take charge of the team as the club continues to search for a new permanent head coach. Now, speaking of permanent head coaches, some of their suitable candidates that they did explore during the summer have since moved on, including Thomas Tuchel, who I just mentioned is now the new England national team manager, while Mauricio Pochettino has since moved on to be named as the USA national team manager. So that then leaves you, of course, we all know Ian McKenna may seem as a less ideal candidate as opposed to the position he was in during the summer. Then that leaves you the likes of Thomas Frank, Graham Potter, who is still out of work. Then Xavi, the former Barcelona manager there, did guide them to the La Liga triumph there. However, he was fired at the end of last season. So those are some of the names that have been mentioned in those circles. And then, of course, you cannot leave out Massimiliano Allegri, the former Juventus manager, very tactical manager there, very impressive, did quite tremendous work with Juventus. Of course, Ruud Van Nistelrooy gets himself into the picture if he can't convince his bosses that he is worth a chance. Now, the question is, how many bets are Manchester United are willing to take with their new manager? Because ever since Sir Alex Ferguson left, they've tried quite a number, and largely it hasn't really worked out. We all remember it kicked off with David Moyes, was then sacked and Ryan Giggs took over as an interim. Louis van Gaal did come in, eventually is sacked and then replaced by Jose Mario Felix Mourinho, who was sacked and replaced by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who was sacked, and they brought in Rafa Rangnick there, who was on an interim basis, gave them quite a good number of recommendations that they didn't think they needed to implement at the time. Again, it turns out he was right, because some of the players that really wanted to sign for them are some of the stars present day. Most notably was Julian Alvarez, I think from River Plate, who ended up at Manchester City and has since been bought for a fee north of £80 million by Atletico Madrid. So that's the kind of thing. And then from North Frank, then they brought in Erik ten Hag, for whom we now know his fate has ended badly at Manchester United with that sacking. So they ought to get it right this time around. Otherwise, they risk falling even further beyond down the competitive pecking order of the Premier League. Do let me know what your thoughts are about that news and who you think Manchester United should replace Erik ten Hag with. Otherwise, stay blessed and I'll see you next time.